I'm about to draft with a man who has done over 2,000 drafts this summer. Yes, over 2,000 drafts. He's one of the sharpest drafters in the entire space. And in this video, he's going to share with us all of his favorite draft tactics, including his favorite player targets, his favorite sleeper, and his favorite stack. And to put things on hard mode, we somehow end up in a draft with the BBM3 champ, Pat Kerrane. I'm Pete Overzet. This is the Deposit Kingdom. Let's meet Sackreligious. I'm here with Sackreligious, and I have to ask you a question. Do you think there's anyone who has done more drafts than you this offseason?
There might be a couple people. I know there's some other sickos out there that get down the kind of volume that I get down. If you count the 340 active slow drafts that are going right now, I think I've got a little over 2,100 done. I'll probably finish the off season with around 2,200. We might get to 2,300 if I really grind here.
I'm going to end up, I think, around like 350, 375. And that feels like a lot for me. So Sackreligious is going to end up like 6 to 7 times as many. You're a sick man, Sackreligious.
Yeah, I mean, I do have my trusty sidekick to help me out. But yeah, it was, I mean, I'd be lying if I said that it was easy to get that much volume down. It was definitely, there was some hard work involved.
This is why it's going to be so fun to kind of hear your preferences. Like when you do that many drafts, you really get dialed in on what do you like, what don't you like. So right off the top, what is your favorite structure that you find yourself doing across all of these drafts?
The way I like to play lots of peer-to-peer games is I try to be as flexible as I possibly can and exploit the opportunities that are given to me in the given situation and whatever the game is. My favorite structure is pretty broad. I'd really just say it's having 5 wide receivers through the first 7 rounds. And the reason for that is there's a couple picks that I really like in the early rounds that are not wide receivers. Like there's a few running backs that I really like. There's some elite tight ends, elite quarterbacks I'm partial to. So I like having the flexibility to take advantage of those when they're available to me. But I really don't want to get behind the 8 ball at wide receiver. I think that's one of the most important things in all of the stuff that I've looked at, you know, in historical data and doing the analysis that I've done on best ball contests. It really seems important to be very strong at wide receiver.
So how do you approach those situations where, you know, maybe you get a running back value, maybe you're at the 4 or 5 turn and Lamar and Andrews are there. And then next thing you know, you are only going to be able to get to 4 running backs through, or sorry, 4 wide receivers through 7 rounds. Are you never even putting yourself in that position? Like, how do you balance that out?
No, I certainly can find myself in that position. The Lamar Andrews with CMC is the way that I probably get there the most often, where I'm like, oh boy, all right, we're only going to have 4 wide receivers through 7.
For, you know, most people, if you're a sicko, you kind of know those wide receivers that are there through the end of round 7. Who is your cutoff where it's like, okay, I don't feel good about this being one of my 5 through 7?
Yeah, it's like right around the Jameson Williams line. You know, if I get Jameson as my 5th wide receiver, I'm probably pretty happy. But anything after that, and it's starting to feel a little dicey, you know, every once in a while you have to mix in like a Cortland Sutton as your 5th or something, you know, in a 2,200, 2,300 team portfolio, you're going to have some stuff that's a little different than what you consider to be kind of like your base strategy that you're working with.
So if you're that wide receiver heavy through 7 rounds, I'm going to guess your favorite player target might fall into the 0 RB range here.
That's a pretty good guess. And it's funny. I was thinking about, you know, who is my favorite player target? And I've had a lot of different favorite player targets over the summer. They've all been my you know, top exposed player at a certain point. Early in the offseason, it was Rashee Rice. I had, you know, well over 30% Rashee Rice. And as his price has risen, I've been getting less and less of him. Then it was Drake May. I, you know, had so much Drake May, Jaylen Warren. But all of those guys, you know, for one reason or another, have now taken a backseat to my new favorite player target, which is Rico Dowdle. But even he is starting to get away from me. If only Pat hadn't written that article, Legendary Upside, about Rico Dowdle being a great pick. I mean, I think just in the last couple of weeks, I've seen him come up, you know, at least a full round. But I've got a little over 30% Rico Dowdle now.
And it seemed like his price all summer was kind of the specter of people worrying that they would bring in a 3rd back. If everyone knew that this was the backfield on week 1, like his price would have risen quicker, it feels like.
The Cowboys have this really stupid saying where they say, we like our guys. And that's Cowboys code for, we're not going to do anything to address this position in free agency or the draft. When I heard them saying we like our guys about the running back position earlier this offseason, I was like, okay, so someone here is going to be the winner. And I wasn't positive it was Rico Dowdle right out of the gate, but pretty early on, he looked like a really good pick to me. So I guess that's one of the that's the silver lining to, you know, the relic of being a diehard Cowboys fan for over 30 years. It's been nothing but pain, except occasionally you find a diamond in the rough for best ball.
So along the same lines of, if you're taking a ton of wide receivers early, it means you're probably not getting a ton of elite quarterbacks. What does this mean for your favorite stack in best ball drafts?
Yeah, oddly enough, this is the year where I've got the most elite quarterback exposure that I've ever had in best ball. Part of that is the way that the prices shake out with the new landscapes this year. I felt like Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, even Patrick Mahomes were all pretty underpriced. But the stack that I prefer the most is a Patriots team stack. And when I say a Patriots team stack, I mean anyone and everyone is really allowed to hop on board. And so that's either of the running backs, be it Ramondre Stevenson earlier or Antonio Gibson later, stacked up with Drake May. And then preferably the way I'm playing the pass catchers more recently is focusing on Jalen Polk, Demario Douglas, and Hunter Henry, because in the past I have been able to identify situations that I felt had a good chance of being fundamentally mispriced and offering a really good opportunity to stack up a team and get a big win. But in the past, I was too confident on which players specifically were going to benefit from that situation. And so that led to things like having a really big bag of Olamide Zaccheaus the year that Cordero Patterson was the league winner. And so I've tried to learn from that, and I don't want to be overly confident in the players that I think are going to benefit. I certainly have player takes and the guys that I think are good, but I don't want to get too far out over my skis on that. I want to lean into the chaos a little bit.
What about your favorite galaxy brain idea? What is the thing that maybe is a little unconventional that you are completely okay doing in drafts?
Yeah, I'm a really big proponent of big giant team stacks where you're not just getting a couple or even 3, sometimes 4 pass catchers from a team, but you're also including the running back on the team. And the situations that I think are the most advantageous to do that are where you have prices opposite for the pass catching portion of the stack and the running back portion of the stack. And what I mean by that is, if there's a team with a running back that's going early, you have to spend higher draft capital on the running back. And then all of the pass catching components, the quarterback and the receivers, tight end, all go later, or vice versa. Expensive pass catchers, cheap running back. I really like pairing those together. And there's some really interesting reasoning behind why that works so well. For the expensive running back, cheap pass catchers, if you think through it, those running backs are only priced up to where they are on those teams where people have identified them as bad. So some good examples of this would be the Denver Broncos. Javonte Williams still goes, relatively early compared to the rest of the Broncos players. Cortland Sutton is up there with him. But after that, Tim Patrick, who's the starting wide receiver there, is going in the last round. Josh Reynolds goes, in the last round or undrafted. Bo Nix is available in the 16th, 17th, 18th round. But the reason Javonte Williams goes as early as he does is because people are projecting a decent amount of volume for him. Same thing can be said about Ramondre Stevenson. We think the Patriots are going to want to run the ball a lot. Ramondre looks to be the benefactor of a lot of that volume coming his way. But people think the Patriots are going to be really bad, and so the rest of that stack is really cheap. But when you get a win on one of those underpriced stacks, when the Patriots, instead of being the 32nd best offense in the league or the 25th best offense in the league, I don't even need them to be good. I just need them to not be the absolute worst. You get this benefit on the team level where all of those players were actually worth more draft capital than they were priced at. And especially when you get the running backs that are more expensive and then the team is better than anticipated, a big driving factor for a running back's value is how good is the team? How good is the offensive line? How many points are they going to score? And so if you already were going to get a bunch of volume for a guy and you thought they were on a bad team, but it turns out the team isn't as bad as everyone priced them, that can be a really big benefit, because then you have a ton of volume and a better situation than you were paying for. So big team stacks with running backs, definitely one of my favorite gal brain ideas.
Last one here, favorite 18th round dart, maybe a low owned guy here, a sleeper in the final rounds.
Yeah, it was hard to pick just one here. I really try to mix it up in the 18th round, but one that I've found myself gravitating towards a lot recently, especially when I've got like a Texan stack or a Raven stack and I'm wanting a bring back or another piece to tack on there, is Keaton Mitchell. We've got people really excited about drafting Devon Achane. He's going in the second round. Well, there was one running back that had more yards per carry than Devon Achane. Granted, it was on a pretty small sample. It's less than 100 carries, but that was Keaton Mitchell, and he was over 8 yards per carry. He is definitely electric with the ball in his hands. He can break big plays. And so you're getting a guy, he's not healthy to start the season. He's coming off that torn ACL, but he was a young player. He's super explosive, and guys like that tend to recover pretty well. And so I'm really banking on him coming alive in the second half of the season and hopefully being able to break off 1 or 2 explosive plays in week 17 for me.
Love it. Yeah, he's one of the forgotten guys. Everyone talks about Hawkinson coming back, but even right now, we're seeing Cam Akers look incredible in the preseason coming off an Achilles. So these guys keep just coming back faster and faster. So it seems like it could be an edge to be more willing to be in on these guys.
If a guy is relatively young and it's a clean ACL tear, it's really it's not the same deal that it used to be. It used to be, oh gosh, guy tore his ACL, it might be curtains for him. And that's how we used to view Achilles too. But I mean, lately it kind of seems like guys are able to come back from Achilles injuries. I think we've still got a pretty small sample on that. But J.K. Dobbins will be really interesting to watch this year. If, a guy can truly come back from an Achilles and be good. Him and Cam Akers both will be interesting to watch.
So I'm laughing right now, Sackreligious, because I just hopped us into a BBM draft, and our friend and colleague for you at Leg Up, for me at Ship Chasing, the man who won Best Ball Mania 3, Daily Rojo, has the 101, and also a man who very much likes these Drake May onslaught. So we might have to go to war for Pat to get our guys in this draft.
I've done a lot of drafts with Pat in my rooms this year, and I got to tell you, it's a game of chicken when it comes to the Patriots. We see each other, and especially if you're drafting right next to each other, then we're like, oh gosh, normally I don't take Jalen Polk till, pick 130.
Yeah.
If I don't take him here, Pat's going to grab him first. Then he's got the inside track on setting up Drake May. So it'll be fun to see how we navigate this one.
Yeah, this is honestly too perfect. I promise you this is not planned here. I do know Pat mentioned on Best Ball Breakfast, I do the live streams over on the Pete Overs at YouTube channel. Pat mentioned he's way behind on his BBM entry. So he is probably just catching up right now, and bad luck on our part that he's in our draft here with us. But at least we're on opposite sides of the board. He's at 101, takes CMC. We're at 109 here. What have you been doing at this slot normally?
Yeah, usually in the first round, I'm not really deviating from ADP. This year, I think we have lots of really good picks in the first round. Last year, there were 2 fades that I was making in the first round. It was Travis Kelce and Austin Eckler. Both of those paid off really well for me last year, and it allowed me to get really overweight on players like Tyreek Hill. It was a little overweight on CeeDee Lamb. And so those things, really benefited me from being able to correctly pick those fades. This year, I don't have a ton of confidence in fading any of the players in the first round. I think we've got a really strong first round this year. The only spot I'm doing anything slightly different than just going off of ADP is I think Amon-Ra is going a little high for what he is. And so I'll be taking Justin Jefferson, Breece Hall, and occasionally Bijan over Amon-Ra. In my whole portfolio, I don't have a big fade on him, though. I think I'm going to finish around 7%.
So we are here. All the top 8 by ADP went. Are you AJ Brown, Wilson, or Puka here?
Yeah, I really like AJ Brown just because he sets up the Jalen Hurts in the 4th round stack. And I feel like that price on Jalen Hurts is just not correct. And so even though I like Garrett Wilson a little bit better than AJ Brown, the fact that I can get Jalen Hurts at pick 40 in almost every draft that I take AJ Brown in, really makes me not want to pass up on any AJ Brown shares because I'd like to be overweight on Jalen Hurts.
If you do a bunch of that and you're in on Drake May, I mean, those two kind of pair together well from how much capital you're spending on quarterback.
There was actually a point during the offseason where I was just looking at my portfolio. I was like, oh my gosh, I have so much Drake May paired with Jalen Hurts that I need to start doing some different stuff here. I need to instead, switch over to some Broncos stacks with Jalen Hurts and not only have it be Patriots and Eagles paired together.
Well, and the other thing, I assume the Eagles stuff then helps set up your Rico pick as a Week 17 correlation with Eagles and Dallas.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake Ferguson was one I was doing earlier in the offseason before he moved up a little bit. Here, I would normally be Drake London. Occasionally, I'll take Nico Collins as well. But I think here I'm happy to do Drake London.
Yep. Let's take Drake London. So we start AJ Brown and Drake London. Nothing crazy there by ADP. The one kind of interesting thing that's happened in this draft so far is the 12 hole took Achane to pair him with Gibbs, generally a pairing that would be tough to get if you're just trying to capture ADP followers. But AJ Brown, Drake London, a pretty standard start from the 9 hole.
Yeah, and I'll mix this up. Most of my drafts I'm doing with the sidekick, so it's helping me diversify. So I'm not just always clicking AJ Brown, Drake London. Occasionally I'll end up, like I said, with Nico Collins. Sometimes Jalen Waddle will get mixed in there, Deebo Samuel. That way I'm not just always building the same team of AJ Brown, Drake London, what wide receiver falls to me in the third, plus Jalen Hurts.
How much is elite tight end part of your strategy?
Definitely overweight on elite tight end. The plan here when we have AJ Brown is we want to get Jalen Hurts in the 4th round. To be able to fit in that tight end, I'm almost always going to take a wide receiver here in the 3rd round, just knowing I've got a detour coming in the 4th. And I probably want an elite tight end, if I can manage it, unless there's some really great wide receiver value there.
This side of the board, you aren't tempted with a ton of ADP values at running back, right? Like the days of Kerrane falling to like 33, that's long gone. So like when you're over here, it's like, yeah, you could get a James Cook at 57, but it's not too tempting. We are on the clock here. Pacheco, Dell, Pittman, Zay. What do you like?
Yeah, this one would be Tank Dell for me. Occasionally, I will mix Zay Flowers in instead of Tank Dell here, because usually I'm not getting both of them on a team that starts with AJ Brown because I'm taking Jalen Hurts in the 4th. So I don't want all of my AJ Brown teams to be Tank Dell just because I have Tank Dell ranked higher than Zay Flowers. So I will mix that up occasionally. So yep, this would be Jalen Hurts. I would never really think twice about it.
Yeah, and it's like if you're looking here and it's like, what would you even be tempted by? You're going to have other elite tight ends come back in the 5th and the 6th. Pittman, Amari, I guess ETN is a nice price for a running back. But really, it's like once you make that the Brown bet, it's like, how does this win you a tournament without Jalen Hurts being part of that?
Yeah, and I'll tell you some of the a couple spots where I've not had Jalen Hurts on a team that started just like this is when Jalen Hurts gets sniped by a guy out of the 10, 11, 12 hole. But then that means a wide receiver that I've got in the previous tier with Tank Dell, like maybe instead of Dell, we get Steph Diggs and then Dell falls, or maybe Zay Flowers falls, or T Higgins. And then I end up with those 4 receivers. And some of my favorite teams are actually those AJ Brown teams to start where I thought I was going Jalen Hurts, but then I just get 4 really strong wide receivers that I don't think you should be able to get through 4 rounds. And then I end up pushing, say, CJ Stroud all the way back to, in the 80s.
We are back on the clock here. Ridley Richardson, Jaden Reed. What do we do here?
Queue up Jaden Reed and then tab over into wide receiver for me real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's probably Reed for me here. And then go to the tight end tab real fast as well.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I would take Reed here and then feel pretty confident that we're getting one of Kittle or Pitts to come back.
One nice thing too, I always just keep an eye on it. All of our wide receivers having different bye weeks is always just like a nice bonus there. And then decent cover. There's Pitts and Kittle on the board. And then one of the teams in between us already has a tight end.
Yep. Yeah. Getting all 4 different bye weeks for your first 4 wide receivers is certainly not something that's necessary, but it does make you feel cozy inside.
So we are, we're aiming, or, if we can pull it off, the 5 wide receivers through 7. Right now we have the 4 wide receivers through 5. Jalen Hurts, our 1 non-wide receiver pick. Kyle Pitts does go off the board here to the team in the 11 hole. So it's basically just seeing if this team, he did do it. He took Kittle there at the turn. I was worried about that. So no tight end pick for us here. Then is this where you kind of pivot over to running back, or still a wide receiver you like?
I think I still want to take a receiver because I think I'm going to be just as happy with the running backs in the next round. But Rome Odunze went. So maybe this is where we go running back. We can go ahead and take a Rachaad White.
Yeah, it was funny. I was listening to you guys were recently talking about Rachaad White on the Legendary Upside podcast and talking about how you guys had made like a slight rankings adjustment to get him slightly above ADP, so that after kind of a summer of close to a full fade, getting, a little exposure blanket to him.
I'm below 2% Rachaad White, a little above 1% Rachaad White. He's certainly not someone that I want to, have a big stand on in my portfolio of being overweight, but he's also someone where I can see the path for him to have a similar season to what he did last year.
Our friend Pat Kerrane already trying to set up his Drake May pick with a Ladd McConkey selection at the 6-7 turn, despite knowing he's falling to the end of round 7 these days. The wide receivers are getting chewed up a good bit. We talked about the canary in the coal mine, Jameson Williams, before. We'll see what this drafter before us does. What do you think here, depending on this pick?
Yeah, there's a couple interesting ways we can go here. I like a lot of these picks. Najee Harris was one I was going to suggest. I think a lot of these running backs are pretty similar. I do really like Jake Ferguson as well. Jordan Addison is nice because he's a bring back with our Jaden Reed stuff, but I think we might be able to push him through. And so I think let's do Ferguson here because we didn't get our elite tight end.
All right, this is going to put over on the side screen here. We're going to get the red check. People get really sad. 5 wide receivers through 7 rounds. No red. We're going to get a red check here. We didn't pass that test.
Well, fear not, listener. We've got Jameson Williams and Jordan Addison, who are the guys we would have taken in the 7th. And if both of them go, so we don't get a 5th wide receiver through 8 rounds, we'll end up taking DeAndre Hopkins here, who I'm still, perfectly happy taking. He fell a lot due to his knee injury, but it sounds like it's nothing too serious. He should be, if not, back to full health early in the season, playing at, 85, 90%, early in the season here.
How much of the Jake Ferguson boost for you is in a vacuum versus playing the week 17 game environment with our Eagles stack?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I would take him here as opposed to trying to push him into the next round is because of the Eagles Week 17 matchup. We're not going to get any other Cowboys pass catchers, really. I'm really not interested in drafting Brandon Cooks very much. So Jake Ferguson, to me, is kind of the last stop on the train for a quality Week 17 bringback for our Eagles stuff. And I've fallen behind on Ferguson. I'm underweight on him now, and that doesn't reflect how I feel about his opportunity. If you want my hot take, Dalton Kincaid is just fancy Jake Ferguson. I don't think either of them are particularly super special from a talent standpoint. I think they're both very competent tight ends, that can play a large role in their team's passing attack. But Jake Ferguson goes 3 rounds later, and I wouldn't be surprised at all for him to have the same volume that Dalton Kincaid does. And on an offense where the quarterback is not going to vulture as many of the touchdowns from a rushing standpoint.
Well, God might have closed a wide receiver window, but maybe he opened a Patriots mega stack here. Ramondre's on the board. This is a super wide receiver heavy room. What do you want to do?
Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking. Very happy to go Ramondre here. And so in these situations where you end up a little behind at wide receiver where you want, first, I'm very happy that we started 3 wide receivers and then threw a 4th on there in the 5th round. So we still have some good wide receiver firepower, but we'll probably end up with 8. And now we're looking to set up that Patriots stack where I know that I've got 2 wide receiver options later that can be correlated for me that I really like. The other thing that is nice is Pat does have a week 14 bye at quarterback with Lamar Jackson. So he will be forced to go 3 quarterbacks if he goes Drake May or take a 0 in week 14.
Brock sliding here.
Brock Bowers is pretty interesting here, but it does kind of close us off then to Dallas Goedert. Oh, this is an interesting spot. We do already have the week 14 bye at running back. Go ahead and queue up Brian Robinson, though, because he's normally who I would take here. I think we just take Brock, though. I think we take Brock, and we just plan on not doing Goddard here.
Yeah. I like that as well. I mean, you're not going to twist my arm. I mean, Brock's one of my most drafted players. I think my most drafted tight end, and I don't have him paired with Ferguson much. So I like that. The other kind of thing I was thinking through our selections, like, how do you think about the Rico stuff, right? Because he's 118. We pick at 112. He's a popular player. Basically, no chance he comes back to 129.
Yeah, he might not even get to us at 112 here. He goes on the turn often now. And that's okay if that's part of, the cat getting out of the bag on him. Just people are much more excited to click him now. And that's all right. My bags are packed on him. So in this situation, like, I'm taking him over Tajay Spears. Zach Moss or Rico Dowdle feel pretty similar to me. But yeah, here, tell me why Tajay Spears is a better click than Rico Dowdle. I don't really think you can. Devin Singletary is one that makes a lot of sense to me, but I do want to build out that team level bet on the Cowboys and just go Rico Dowdle here. And also, I know it's going to make Pat sad if we take Rico Dowdle and he does not make it to the other side of the board.
Well, I have some breaking news that Pat is already sad. I got a DM from him just seconds ago that says, I immediately regretted not taking Bowers. So I'm not going to let him know I'm recording with you right now until we secure our Drake May bags. So we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, no, we can't pull the mask off too early. Otherwise, he'll be on high alert. Man, this is a gross part of the draft. Is. We can queue up Charbonnet. Go ahead and tab just to wide receiver here. Yeah, we'll just do Charbonnet here. Then we're just knowing that we're very likely gonna we're probably gonna play this a little differently than a lot of my drafts. Oftentimes I try to end with one of or both of 3 quarterbacks and 3 tight ends. In order to get us to where we want to be at wide receiver, we're going to need to just stick with 2 and 2 at the onesie positions. It's one of the grossest wide receiver rooms. I haven't seen anything like this since early in the summer. Yeah, I mean, we can go ahead and do Mooney and play it off the Drake London team bet here. Building out that bet on Atlanta. Because the running backs are not really ones that I'm terribly interested in here, and there's guys that I want later. We certainly don't need a tight end, so that was a take our medicine kind of pick. Let's see, of course Pat does take Jalen Polk at the turn. Dashes our dreams of having him come back, because sometimes you can get Polk there at 129. Right. Mike Williams would have been one. Shoot. You could have even gotten me to take Jerry Jeudy there. I was going to see, like, with the Patriot stuff in how you kind of navigate, wide receiver stuff there. Obviously, we took Mooney. Yeah, I knew what that's the dagger. Yeah, that's the dagger. Because I was going to say, I was curious if you were going to float Demario Douglas at 136. I thought about him there, but I thought we might be able to get him past Pat with all of his week 14 bye concerns. And him already having Polk, I didn't know if you'd feel like he had to take Douglas there, but he boxes us out. Usually you can get Douglas here at 153. Yes. Douglas is one of my highest drafted players. Pat is actually legitimately in trouble with week 14 buys, though. He just took Jaleel McLaughlin as well. So he has Ravens, Patriots, Broncos, and I don't see him stopping on those teams either. So he's going to have quite a few week 14 buys. We might be out of the woods on him contesting us for Drake May, but I don't want to jinx anything. And we're going to have a real hard time even getting a stacking partner with Drake May here. So we need to begin considering some other options at quarterback. We are really going to need to dig at wide receiver here in a little bit, but it's okay. There's some guys I like late.
I will mention the Kyle Pitts team behind us only has Mahomes. I doubt he passes on Cousins twice.
No, yeah, we'll be taking Cousins here if he makes it to us. Because if you look at our options for stacked quarterback, we do not have any that are alive still that I feel are worth playing. I'm not going to play it through Gardner Minshew. We could do some running back stacks and throw in some late back stacks like with Rachaad White and Baker Mayfield. But Kirk Cousins here, around after ADP, double stacked. And I know that I'm only going to have 2 quarterbacks in this draft, really strong. So I'm done at the quarterback position. I'm done at the tight end position. Now I am just taking upside swings at both wide receiver and running back. And that's how I like it to be in these late rounds, is not having to rely on these players to hit my lineup. I've got plenty of volume at running back, and I've got wide receivers that are going to command a lot of targets. I'm just going to need a lot of wide receivers now to help me get to sufficient firepower.
Yeah, and we're kind of probably going to pencil in Will Shipley for one of our running back selections, depending on how it breaks here. So yeah, we got the Hurts to AJ Brown, and then the Cousins with Mooney and Drake London. So that is the one nice thing about the Mooney click, is it felt kind of gross at the time, but then works out in a nice way. I'll tab over to running back and wide receiver. Who do you like here?
We'll go ahead and do Bateman here. It's between Bateman or McMillan. I've got a lot of McMillan and not a lot of Bateman, and Bateman does stack with Tank Dell for week 17. And so we'll go ahead and do that with Bateman. It's a bummer because with Pat in the draft, I know McMillan's not coming back, but Pat takes Drake May at pick 169. He does not care about the week 14 buys at all.
I'm also going to petition to the producer here. We put the green checks and the red marks next to the Patriot stack. Put an unflattering PNG of Pat's face next to it. That's how we will denote that we weren't able to get that, because in any other route, I feel pretty confident that we would have been able to land our
Jalen Polk, who was it? The Zach Charbonnet is probably Jalen Polk. We end up with Demario Douglas, and then we're looking at a big Patriot stack here. Man, lots of good options here.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and do... I really like Greg Dortch, but I also like Wandale. I think we'll go Greg Dortch, though.
Okay. Yeah, let's... One little benefit to Dortch, right? Like, his draft percentage is going to end up being a little bit lower than Wandale Robinson, who was drafted more consistently all summer.
For the most part, I'm trying to let that be like icing on the cake rather than the driving factor behind my decisions. I still want to be making good picks. I'm not just picking players solely because other people didn't pick them. Sometimes people didn't pick them because they were bad picks.
Yeah. We are on the clock here at 16-4, still in the running back wide receiver range. What do you like?
Let's go ahead and take a rookie wide receiver here in Luke McCaffrey. That is a bring back to our week 17 Atlanta double stack. He's getting a little bit of a slow start, it sounds like, but you did have the Dotson trade that kind of clears a path for him. And with this room, I'm really not anticipating needing him early on. I'm just hoping for Luke McCaffrey to be able to emerge down the stretch and hopefully give me some strong weeks in the playoffs.
We are now at a 2-4-8-2 with 2 picks left. Obviously, at least one of these is a running back. Where do you fall on the other one?
Yeah, I mean, I've got them penciled both in as Will Shipley and Keaton Mitchell, and that's the plan. So we can go ahead and take Will Shipley here.
And that does complete our Galbrain idea of emphasizing the team stacks with the running backs, and kind of like you said, right, where you're probably not going to be doing a Barkley team stack because that's expensive. It matches up wrong with the elite wide receiver. So then you get the cheaper secondary back super late.
Yeah, and there's ways, there's a lot of different paths that this can benefit you. In the ways that I've kind of looked at this with some modeling from historical BBM data. But I mean, if you just want to think through it, say you get that contingent upside case for Will Shipley and Barkley goes down. Well, the Eagles probably are going to see their run rate drop a little bit then if they don't have Saquon Barkley anymore. We can go ahead and take Keaton Mitchell here and close it out. And then you get a higher pass rate, which benefits your A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. Maybe Jalen Hurts takes a little bit more of the rushing touchdowns. And Will Shipley's a 17th round pick. We don't need him to do a ton for him to be a fantastic value for us. So just getting the kind of the inversion of the prices there from the pass catching side of the team stack and the running back side of the team stack, I think it makes it pretty clear why that can be really advantageous.
So let me recap the full team here, and we'll get your final thoughts. If you guys are new to the channel here, we have a ton of these draft review style videos, and it is fun to go back because some of them go perfectly. I've had some drafts with like Jacob Sanderson where we were able to just execute every single one of his preferences to a T. And then we've had some where, you know, you have someone who loves Drake May more than life itself blowing it up and not allowing us to complete it. So there is the wide spectrum here. I have a playlist down below. But Sackreligious, here's the team: Jalen Hurts, Kirk Cousins at quarterback, Rachaad White, Ramondre Stevenson, Rico Dowdle, Zach Charbonnet, Will Shipley, Keaton Mitchell at running back. Got up to 8 wide receivers: A.J. Brown, Drake London, Tank Dell, Jaden Reed, Darnell Mooney, Rashad Bateman, Greg Dortch, and Luke McCaffrey. And then our 2 tight ends, Jake Ferguson and Brock Bowers. Final thoughts here.
Yeah, pretty happy with how this one shook out. Last year, 2682 was one of my higher drafted roster constructions. This year, it's a little less common for me. I want to say it's like my 4th highest or 4th most frequently drafted, but I've just been getting so much of either a 3rd quarterback or a 3rd tight end or both, which was really uncommon for me last year. It's just, it's really interesting how the landscapes change year over year. But that's what keeps the game fun. You know, it's a new puzzle to solve every year. But I think we solved the puzzle of this draft room to the best of our abilities. So looking forward to seeing how this one shakes out.
This was a fun one. Like I said, we got tons of other draft style contests. BBM, as of this recording, I believe was 85% full. So we are entering the home stretch on these. Definitely hope to squeeze in 1 or 2 more of these videos. We'll also have some other strategy videos in the final weeks, including the Truth Serum episode, which is going to come out shortly after this one. I believe Sackreligious has a True Serum take that is in there, so you can check out more of him and let people know over at Leg Up what you guys got going on here if anyone's trying to cram for their final drafts here before the season starts.
Pat is working on his legendary upside article, you know, his flagship piece of content every season where he gets in a time machine, goes to the future, and sees the different legendary upside scenarios for all of these running backs that have that in their range of outcomes. He describes how they get there or how they don't get there. It's one of my favorite pieces to read all summer. Definitely helps me get my mind right as we're heading into the home stretch of drafts. So that should be out shortly, or at least the first piece of it. We've also got the Sidekick over at Legendary Upside. It is our dynamic rankings draft tool overlay. So you can go on over there, check that out. And it's kind of like having, you know, Pat or myself sitting along with you in your draft, just giving you some helpful recommendations of who we think is the best pick there based on the decisions you've already made in your draft to that point.
I'm dying right now, Sackreligious, because Pat just sent me a follow-up message as if like I didn't know and put in parentheses we were in that draft together. As if I didn't know. Yeah. Yes, Pat, I'm very well aware we were in that draft together. What other little housekeeping thing for me? I forgot to update the overlay. Underdog actually has a new deposit match. It's up to $1,000 deposit bonus now. Right now it's $250. So if you are new, unfortunately, if you've been on the site, they're not going to match you up to $1,000. But if you're new and you put in $1,000, they will top off your account with another $1,000. So one of the better deposit bonuses you can get out there. And also they'll give you a free pick'em special as well. So take advantage of that. I know a lot of you guys have been kind of getting introduced to best ball through some of these streams. So if you guys have questions, feel free to ask. We always hang out in the Deposit Kingdom Discord, and I do Monday morning best ball streams. Obviously only a couple more of those left, but you can check those out on the Pete Overzet live stream channel. Thank you again to Sackreligious. I will link to his author bio on Leg Up in the show notes. Definitely recommend getting a Leg Up sub and checking out some of his great work over there, including talking about week 17 versus week 16, a topic of conversation we've had on the channel this summer as well. So for Sackreligious, and yes, for Pat Kerrane, who had to ruin our draft, I'm Pete Overzet. This has been the Deposit Kingdom. We'll see you guys next time.